I
I
just
don't know. Ah, hello.
I promise.
Um,
So, since uh you're here and you haven't read, I assume you haven't read Black on Both Sides. I will
no.
maybe I'll save it to have like another discussion another time on it. And then what we I know that you have read The Prey of Gods by Nicky Drayden, so we will talk about that. Um I how did you feel about the book overall?
I thought it was like, um, it felt a little bit more, well, it was very much like action based, I think. It like sort of like entertainment, popular culture sort of thing. Like it felt like it was meant, as opposed to a lot of the previous books that we've read, which are maybe a little bit more introspective. It was definitely a lot more like it felt it felt like it was meant to be adapted into like a Netflix anime almost.
Mm,
That's how I explain that. And reading it, this is gonna be obnoxious again, but I read a book by Nicky Drayden earlier this year, or maybe late last year. I don't remember anymore. Time is a formless concept. Um, it was yeah. Nicky Drayden got like um tapped to write a tie-in novel for a major franchise, Overwatch. It was sort of like this, but very much more for children. And Overwatch is basically a globe-trotting science fiction universe where the setting is like there's robots and people are ambivalent about them. So I'm reading this book, I'm like, oh yeah, I can see why she was exceptionally, because there's a character in Overwatch, there's in West Africa, there's a fictional nation called Numbani, and there's like a robot there. One of the characters is like a robot named Orisa, and basically Nicky Drayden was picked to write that character's story because it's about like the child that built that robot, and that robot is a playable character in the game. So that's how that ties together. And
mm.
that child, I think she lifted a lot, at least in my opinion, there's a lot of parallels between that child and Namvula. Definitely a lot less trauma. This is a scholastic book for kids. But yeah, that's me glossing over the broad strokes of that book because it's about this child named Efi building a robot. She has these small robots. I can't remember the name of her like small spider robots that she makes that are sort of like the helper bots in this book. But she yeah, anyway. Uh yeah, she basically gets a grant and then like the story unfolds from there and she's like working on this much larger robot that like slowly develops like sentience and she has to like the boat's almost like sort of going a bit out of her control in a lot of ways. Anyway, um so yeah, I'd say it sort of parallels Namvula because she's like this young baby STEM girly who's like has an affinity for robots and like I feel like that's sort of interesting how that's like her identity as like a powerful deity. Is like her thing is her like pantheon or whatever. Her like what do you call it? Like when a god has like a specific realm of things that they preside over. Um
Her domain or her
yeah. What is it? Parent, sibling, abode. Yeah, for residing over. Yeah. So like her like dominion is basically artificial intelligence as like a god,
okay.
and like and it's like shows up at least like in the later chapters when she's like getting her like when she's getting her god on and like grand slamming Sydney. Her wings are like basically like a silicon, like sheets of silicon with like circuitry on them. Um, but I think that was cool. Um, yeah, I just thought it was very funny that, oh, I really liked Sydney. If I had more energy and time and wasn't getting my ass beat by full-time work, I think I would have drawn Sydney. Um, because
Yeah.
I really liked Sydney's progression from like this sort of main comic relief god stuck doing a South African lady, Mrs. Donovan's nails. Her progression from being like this almost like slapstick villain who like yells at dicks when she steps in their poo and stuff like that, into her like slow progression into being giant superpowered evil woman. And like the job did a very good, made very stringent efforts to like describe everyone's appearance. Like she had like a sequiny black dress on and the wings. She had the big old wings on, and like she took the time to paint him like god mode nails in like a horrific, like fluorescent pink color because the name of the nail polish, I can't remember the name of the nail polish. It was like Apocalypse Now or something like that, but it was like a fluoro pink and didn't go with the sequiny dress that she was wearing.
Yeah.
um,
I
and like
I really enjoyed.
it was a huge issue that like Felicity Lyons was wearing the same dress as her. She was like just about to make her debut at this concert by like terrorizing everyone, and then like one of the opening act has the same dress as her, and she's just like fuck. That was cute. But yeah. Anyway, your
No, I really enjoyed the pacing and it's very easy to read and
yeah.
it
This one works at my level of ability.
I mean
I
I don't think the last book was very hard to read
No, it wasn't.
either. It just it was a lot more um oh there were, I guess in a way there was like a lot less going on that was like more of a life story type of book, and this is more of like a event based novel. Like it doesn't categorize the entire life of a character. It just kind of talks about like this specific set of events, which I thought was really interesting. I think where the story starts and stops, I kind of this kind of feels like it could have been a series. So like it's
Mm.
interesting that I think it is like a one off, which I
Yeah,
uh
she had some like mild sequel tease at the end, but it might have just been like a bookend as well.
yeah, just like kind of like a
It's like all the
epilogue.
characters all the characters still had ongoing issues by the end of the book. But yeah.
So it was really I just had a lot of fun with it. Like it was kind of like popcorny and like
Hmm.
very within its genre of like like action adventure type of novels.
There was
You know,
some there were some pretty heavy elements, especially with like Namvula. But the like earlier chapters with Namvula were pretty miserable. But
yeah.
yeah, for the most part it seemed fairly and a lot of the things that Muzzy has to see as part of his power, um, pretty horrific, especially like yeah, when he's fucking around with Elkin's dad. That was like definitely like a tough thing to go through. So yeah, it wasn't I wouldn't say it's like you know what? I think yeah, it's still like a teen, maybe like late teen audience appropriate
Yeah,
with
I
all
don't know.
the things.
I kind of I mean, I feel like it's an adult book. But it's
Mm.
not the characters are I think that the writing style felt adult. It just felt kind of um I guess kind of like popcorny. It's not like a
Hmm.
super um existential or like it doesn't contemplate huge existence, but I think in the same way that um a lot of adult fantasy and science fiction kind of doesn't. I mean, it's not it definitely it didn't feel like it did I feel like it did what it was trying to do very well. So I didn't feel like it was trying to be anything that was, super intellectual, which I kind of appreciate because I think that sometimes authors feel like they have to be, especially like when you read like a first time book, like because this is not the first book she's written, like this is not the first story she's written, but it's the first novel. So like when you have like a first time novel, you can oftentimes get the impression that the author feels like they have to do like a super introspective, like super genre bending, like uh they have to like, you know, they feel this really deep need to represent. It can sometimes come through in the books sort of haphazardly,
Hmm.
and you can sort of come away with this feeling that the books kind of need like another round of editing. But I definitely feel like she definitely has like I definitely feel like Nicky Drayden has a really good grasp on telling a story, just like telling a good story. And
Hmm.
it reminds me it kind of gave me like Looper vibes. I don't know if you've ever seen that movie.
The one with Joseph Gordon-Levitt
Yeah, the one that
and
everybody always talks about as being like this pinnacle of science fiction. But
okay, let's let's not go that far, but it was I definitely remembered it,
I mean, I feel like
which is a
everybody always
lot.
references that movie. They're like, this is how you tell a good one-off story, like, or like this is science fiction. Like this is it's kind of like a dad movie. Like I think of
A dad movie. I love that.
I have like there's like this whole genre of like books and movies in my head that like a dad would like that you would like watch with your dad and be like, wow, that was a swell time, or that your dad would like put on and be like that your dad would be super excited about, and then you would enjoy, but it would be like, oh, I just love that my dad loves this. You know what I kind of mean?
All right.
Like it's just kind of like
I'm gonna say my dad is not very traditional. Maybe that's why I've turned out how I've turned out. But my dad's very not into popular culture and just and
oh
also
my
like probably wouldn't like violent stuff either, but you know.
my
Um
stepdad was super B movie. He was like super like what are those movies? You know, like the Impossible White Man type of movies where you have like uh these like killers, like John Wick. Like you think about the John Wick movies,
yeah.
they are made for people like that like or like my stepdad. Like so like it's
Like a man
like he's
against
just
the
sort of
world
like
sort of narratives.
super low, like I don't want to say lowbrow, but like it's just not
Like
it doesn't take in a lot of what was
very
going on. Yeah,
very
action
action oriented.
yeah,
Action
action
oriented,
first.
not like relationship or emotion. Or I'm gonna say I'm not gonna say that they aren't emotion focused. Like I think that's understated, but it is a big part of it. But yeah, I'd say they're very action focused and not so relationship focused. Like John Wick's dog gets killed, and then it's about like what he does in response to that, as opposed to like, you know, put it in a stupid way. It's not about like him discussing his feelings and stuff. It's about like action set pieces and stuff like that.
Right, right.
Um,
Like kind of like the James Bond movies.
yeah, and also yeah, I guess there's this other element of like man against the world and stuff like that.
Very
Mission Impossible.
Yeah,
But
Mission Impossible, like our the Tom Clancy movies, or like, just good um insulated uh stories, right? So that's kind of what the vibes that this gave me. Um I just felt like it was a good fun time. I mean, it's not really a lot to unpack, or I feel like the world building was really great. I like that, like you said, I think that some of the topics were a bit, I appreciated that, the ability to delve into like deeper topics about like abuse and things like that. And I think that, maybe the overarching theme of the story was like coming, was like this sort of like feeling like this deep sense of like revenge against the world for like a wrong that was done to you. And I think that that is very queer in and of itself. You pointed out the queer character is like, you like this idea that,
yeah, like
just angry at the world kind of thing. And
very much
um,
multiple levels. It was firing on multiple cylinders with the queer text and subtext.
yeah.
Um,
And
the
I think that it's really hard to write robots. So I appreciated her ability to do that. I think that,
mm,
this feels like a really good episode of like love, death, and robots. You know what I mean?
yeah, yeah, I feel like that would be like the normies analysis of the book. Watched Love, Death, and Robots because I'd like, ugh, so many of them are just like heinously violent. But and this book was a bit violent as well in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
Definitely visually violent. But
Which I guess it kind of makes sense since she does. They every time I look up Nicky Drayden, I get people talk about how great her short stories are, which I've never even read one of her short stories. But so I guess
fake
it
fan.
so I
um,
guess it does make sense that it reminds you, like her work kind of reminds you of the short story collections like that. Like this would be like a really great episode of, you know, I don't think
Love,
it
Death.
doesn't really give me Black Mirror vibes because it's not like really like
No, and Black Mirror. A lot of Black Mirror is like technology bad. Uh, uh,
yeah, and they always have like these really, like deep uh like morals
yeah,
quandary to them, but I don't feel like really was present. Like there definitely is a moral, like I said, there's a moral undercurrent of like that like concept of like being angry at the world here, but it's not
mm,
as like there's not like a lesson that is trying, it doesn't feel like it's trying to teach you a lesson, if that makes sense. So
yeah,
I think that in that sense it's it's uh it's different from like a Black Mirror type story. That's why I think it kind of gives, it's a little bit more like a love death robots kind of thing, like, or like a cyberpunk 2077 type of thing,
yeah,
where like there's just like this world that is inhabited with technology, and we're sharing this story, the science fiction story, one-off science fiction story, but it doesn't feel like it's it doesn't, there's not like this deeper meaning or like deeper question that it's pondering about the technology or relationship to the technology. It's just using that world as a way to tell um this sort of like, revenge story or whatever. And I think that's probably why
yeah,
it feels more like, I think it is very similar to like, you know guy finds out that that there's like, he goes on like this mission, and then encounters this like girl that he needs to protect and like save. Like the mission turned out that, the girl in the mission was actually like, he couldn't kill the girl, he needs to save the girl kind of thing,
mm,
gets those vibes.
yeah, yeah. I'm trying to think of like the direct parallel. It's like, yeah, I suppose like
Like a
Numvola
Jason
would be.
Statham kind of movie.
Yeah, except in this case, like the guy is like either like Muzzy in this case. Muzzy like would be the closest surrogate to that because he sort of like he links up with Namvula early in the narrative. But
Well, I guess it's that it's more like a group of characters, and there's not really
mm,
like a mission. It's just kind of like
in
a
in the other way, it's sort of like Sense Eight, um, but on a more localized
well,
scale.
a little less. Yeah, it's like Sensei
A little less.
without the sex, maybe.
I love that that's like the standout thing from that. Everyone sort of agrees that like Sense8's sex scenes were like fucking off the chain. But what was I gonna say? But yeah,
I think it's more like it kind of gives me a little bit more of like maybe the Matrix kind of vibes.
mm,
Even though the Matrix is kind of like a Black Mirror kind of thing, like where they're like there's like this deep technology bad kind of meaning, but like
mm,
um
yeah, there's just yeah, it's I
the
think
Matrix is kind of all over the place though when it comes to
mm,
lore and meaning and
yeah, it's one of those things that it's sort of like it's similar to like one of those things like Star Wars or Harry Potter or whatever, where it's like just been a really like smash
oop,
hit pop culture thing, and
Harry
then
what?
the hmm? Harry
Harry
who?
what?
Hmm?
Hmm?
Hmm? Hmm? Um. Anyway, yeah, like it's just sort of like spiraled out, and the lore has just sort of like spaghettied out from like the core intellectual property. But that's how the Matrix is sort of going. But yeah, just like the way this narrative is sort of like hopped between characters and then eventually they all sort of come together towards the end. That reminded me a lot of Sense8, or at least like Sense8 is like the blueprint for that sort of narrative storytelling. And I just think that's very interesting. That was like one of the things I really liked about Sense8 was like how like I don't think people like respected enough like how each of the different characters in Sense8 was living a different genre of story. Like it like they were so like each character's like narrative was so tonally different. I thought and then what they like sort of like come together. I don't know that it was necessarily executed perfectly because like some narratives sort of got subsumed in the other ones like
Yeah,
color. But yeah, they I thought that was certainly interesting. I don't know if that was necessarily the case here. Nomvula's story was sort of like a teeny bit tragic and like a definitely heavy on the mysticism. Um, and like Muzzy's one was a bit silly, because it was about him getting like circumcised as like a teenager. It was sort of like a weird, silly coming of age thing. Um, and then like Ria's one was sort of like Ria's one was definitely I can't really put a finger on like what genre it was. It definitely got a bit scary in the middle there when she went to like say hi to her dad. That was mm, okay. Hello. Um, and then there was the who is it? Felicity Lyons or Stoker. Um, like their story was like none of like political intrigue, like he's getting blackmailed and stuff. So like they all had so in that way, like at least Sense8 for me was like Sense8 like fucking altered my brain chemistry when I first watched it. Um and yeah, I think
I
that
think
was
it
a
did for a
really
lot of people.
yeah, yeah it was the thing that made me sub to Netflix and then they cancelled it because thanks Netflix, you're the best. Um yeah, it was just like the Sense8 is sort of like the blueprint for that format of narrative because like and then like of like having it like hop between characters and then the characters like start to bump into each other a little bit and it starts to get closer and closer before the final confrontation in this case, which is oh yeah, and then like that was what I was saying before, like how Sydney's narrative sort of starts out as this like very slapstick I was thinking like when she's like when they're heading to the concert and she's like all dolled up with like her makeup and her relaxer and everything like that. And her like sparkly backless dress for the goddess on demi goddess on the go. Um she like what was it? Um yeah, she's just like steps in like some dick feces and just like gets really mad. I was like, she's sort of like it was very much giving me like the Little Mermaid, Vanessa getting attacked by the seagulls sort of moment where she's like,
Have you seen the
even though
Little
she,
Mermaid?
yeah, like in the animated one, she gets attacked by seagulls.
Oh.
Um, and she's just like, "Ugh," gets really angry. And like, she's the primary antagonist and she is very scary, but she like has these moments where she's like, I just like imagined like her like looking really exaggerated and angry, like her hair like standing on end and like her eyes going like really big and frowny because she's really angry at these little animals. And then like it's definitely personal because she's like getting the Z hybrids to like go hard on them when she's like enacting her plan. She's like, look, I'm gonna mass murder all of the dicks. And starting this book, I thought something I learned reading this book. I thought dicks were like a bird. I guess I just inherently thought they'd be like we have a thing in Sydney called a bin chicken, but it's a technical. It's like actual name. It's an ibis, but it's basically like they're everywhere in Sydney, and they normally have like white feathers, but because of like the urban setting, sort of look like a dusty green color and they're referred to as bin chickens because they don't smell very nice and they eat rubbish. But yeah, that's what I thought. Dicks were a bird because that's like what I associate them with. But yeah,
Who was your
um,
favorite character?
um, Sydney or Ria Natrajan. That was like what the other thing I was gonna say when it was firing on all cylinders, like with queerness. It's like one of the characters is like the primary antagonist is a woman who's like using her magical superpowers. She like murders people and uses it to remove her back fat and stuff like that. And it's like, okay, this is gay. She murders
Yeah,
someone in like a
you
fitting
you
room.
support women's wrongs.
Yeah, it's like the ultimate good for her narrative, except for the fact she doesn't win. But yeah, she like murdering the employee when they say, "Oh, we could go take you to another store where they like might have some more options for your shave," and then she's just like, and then next scene, she's there buying the dress and it fits her now. But yeah, I thought that was good. Um. But what was I going to say? Yeah, I think Sydney, for reasons I described earlier, I thought I liked Sydney was a very good one, good character because she's like got the slapstick elements and she's a little like really spiteful, but also like a very anxious villain as well. I think that was
Yeah,
quite good. Uh, yeah. And then also just like Riya Natrajan because this is a weird one because this like narrative is also a little bit video gamey. I'm gonna tie it into another one. There's a character in League of Legends. Well, the character I play in League of Legends is like called Sona. Who's like she's basically like a wizard or like a mage sorcerer, and like her power is basically controlling people with music. And like ultimate attack is like hitting people with music blasts. And then there's another character in the game called Seraphine, who's like literally a singer, and like she basically does what Ria Natrajan does, where she
kind of gives arcane vibes.
yeah, definitely, because like Arcane is set in the League of Legends universe. Seraphine is in the city that Arcane is set in as well. So everyone, although she's a very new character, so she probably didn't exist when they were developing the show. So unfortunately, I don't think we're going to see Seraphine.
I
But
mean the book was giving me arcane vibes a little bit,
mm,
and it
yeah,
also does that
like
thing where like it has all these characters that come together in interesting ways.
because like Seraphine's thing in League of Legends is that she like every person has like a song emanating from them and she can hear it, and like that's her thing.
She's
And
an
she like
empath.
she yeah, basically her power is magically supercharged empathy because she can like basically harmonize people's songs, and like her ultimate attack is she basically like fires it, she like sings it. She like has a really controlled note that she can blast people with. And Ria Natrajan like literally does that to one of the Z hybrids. It also like brings me back to like one of those like shit posts people share, like a reaction clip of like a little kid singing along to Lady Gaga. And it's just like, okay, monsters, everybody better be jumping. And I'm just thinking that's just what was playing in my head when she's like blasting the Z hybrids for their voice. Just like, okay, monsters, everyone better be jumping.
It's like your
But
internet
yeah.
big brain, and you're like, I wonder if this is how most people encounter that
Yeah.
story.
Well, I think yeah, there's like the I especially like the later chapters of the book. There was a lot of levity, I think. Um
Yeah.
it was very it was low
It was a
key
fun
Googling
read.
that
I
word to
would
make
say
sure I
that.
used it.
I think it is a fun read. I think it's a
Hmm.
very fun read. I'm glad that it got picked. I didn't
Hmm.
really know what to expect going in because to debut, it's not a very widely talked about book, so it
Yeah,
doesn't have it doesn't have
it's
a lot
from
of
a
impression.
genre that's it's like a genre that's very frequently adapted, but I think like within like print media, like like within like books and novels itself, it's probably quite rare.
Yeah.
Like just one slice of the pie. But
But I
it's
also
like
just read Dick Fight Island, so I think that I have a
Dick
particular
Fight Island.
yeah, it's
Hmm.
a manga. Um, it's
Is
a
that the one where like
it's a yaoi manga.
yeah, but like everyone's like got like weird superpowers related to their junk.
It's not like superpower, just more like it's I mean, you would just have to read it. I mean, like it's kind of hard to describe, but it's pretty literal. The title is pretty literal, but
Hmm.
anyway, uh I think that you just when you read a lot of things and you encounter a lot of stories, you can sort of kind of feel like you don't know, like, because I don't read up a lot about the things that I read before I read them, and I don't
Hmm.
read a whole lot about the books that I pick for this book club. I think mostly I just go off of like vibes and like general like I go off like the general book pitch kind of, and like whether or not
Hmm.
I think that it's a good fit for the mission that I put out for the book club. And um I think that this is probably a good example of something that a lot of people probably didn't know about, or that doesn't get talked about a lot, that is um was really good for the book club, because I think that it feels like a niche thing that people can latch onto, and now you have like this reminds you of, like, for people that hadn't heard of Nicky Drayden, now they have like a reference point of like the kind of thing that she is able to do, and maybe
Hmm.
look out for like the next thing she has coming out and stuff like that. And I think that's really important, and that's one of the reasons why you know I have I started this book club to like talk about books like this, like books that I might not have anybody that I might read on my own and have nobody to talk about with, because nobody's really read it. But so I think that that's really cool and awesome that we were able to read this one, that it got chosen, and that I have like a new author on my radar that I wasn't necessarily paying attention to before, and that I have like this really cool book that I read because of it. I can, anticipate the next thing that she writes, or go into and try to find the other things that she might um write that I might be interested in that I wasn't necessarily going to be on the lookout for before.
Mm. Yeah, it's yeah, I'd actually this is like the first time I've actually like read this is like the first time I've actually the first time I've read a story that has actually been first time I've read a story by an author that I'd already read a story by, even though like the first one was like Scholastic's kid book. But not to downplay that book, but I did think
And then she also has
that
like a
it was
Minecraft book that she wrote.
yeah, I think I think she's very good for like I think she probably does well getting picked for like writing like for an already existing IP. And I think yeah, this reading this story, I can see why she gets tapped for that because there's a lot of um yeah, I think she gets tapped for that because she's very good at like writing genre stuff for like pop culture sort of things. Like I said, I think this would very easily adapt into like a Netflix anime, as you said earlier. Um, like you said, it was giving you like arcane vibes in a lot of ways, and I think this would be very like easily adapted into like a Netflix anime. But, we'd have to see. I think Netflix has gotten a bit tighter on the belt for keeping their shows alive now, which honestly I think should have been expected. But that's a different topic entirely. Um,
Yeah, I mean, what can you do? So
mm,
I think she kind of has more. Say she has more books in this sort of like area, like just Pray to Gods, and then she also has, which I think looks like it actually won some awards, maybe. And
mm.
then she has another book called Escaping Exodus, and then there's a sequel to that book. So that came out in
I wonder what that
2020.
one's about. In 2012, did you
It came
say?
out in 2017, and then the
Ah,
sequel came out in 2021 for that book.
hmm, that's interesting.
Yeah.
I suppose
It's
that sounds science fictiony to me.
just yeah, it's a space book. So it's about
Space.
set in
um,
deep space in which fate of humanity rests on the slender shoulders of an idealistic and untested young woman. A blend of science fiction, dark humor, and magical realism. So kind of like the same vibes as this book.
yeah, I'm seeing some like genre parallels. Um, yeah, I think the space setting would change things up a little bit. Um, Maybe people are more tolerant of AI and stuff in space. Um, hmm. Who was your favorite character? I never asked you that. Never
Um,
returned the question to you.
I like Muzi.
Mizzy?
Yeah, and um,
It was through this book I found out that people use the expletive bloody hell in South Africa. I thought that was something they only did like in the
and I
UK and
also like Sydney.
Australia.
I also like Sydney as well.
Yeah,
That's similar.
yeah, Sydney was definitely a good character to like have the narrative revolve around. It was like she had a lot of like layers of entertainment value, I'll say.
Yeah.
Um hmm, but yeah, I think yeah, Mizzy also like almost became like a de facto point of view character for a lot of the book, I think. Um I'd say yeah, at least like in like the third quarter he was sort of like a big part of it. Um what was I gonna say? Yeah, like the first half of the book seemed to be more focused on like Stoker and Rhea.
Mhm.
Um, thinking of the other thing we were going to talk about.
What other thing?
I'm trying to remember. That was the other thing. Is like trying to figure out what like the Z hybrids look like in my head. There was a lot of opportunity for like concept art, concept art
Mhm.
inspiration for this book because there's a lot of like things that don't exist but have like clear clear design instructions involved. Like were were what was it? Were like the Alfie bots, were Alfie is like humanoid shaped or were they like a little Roomba thing? I don't know if that was necessarily you could like look at the cover art of the book and assume that was like an Alfie on the cover, but I don't think that's necessarily meant to be like a literal image of an Alfie bot on the front.
Well, it is a cool cover though. I think it.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm wondering what they used to make it. It looks like it's painted. It looks like it's either painted or like photo mashed. Like a combination of the two. I know illustrated covers like that. A piece of anecdotal knowledge from when I was a kid was like illustrated covers like that are more expensive than like photographs or just like a graphics design thing. So that's good that they splurged for that. I think it really adds to it. Had something to had something to look at while I was going through the book. Um, I think the Alfie I don't know what necessarily the Alfies were supposed to look like, whether they were like a spider or some sort of humanoid thing. As yeah. So yeah, there's a lot of interesting concept art potential for this book. Um Also like the design of like the gods and stuff like that. When they're like, yeah, some of these people had like peacock feathers coming out of them. That was another thing I wanted to just like briefly mention is just like how like I wonder if they noticed in like I wonder if it's something they considered when they were talking about this thing whether like the peacock like when I was working at like in retail, I was like working in toys and they'd like have like a peacock character and it had a feminine name, but like naturally because it's a peacock character, it has like the fan of tail feathers and stuff like that. And I'm like, I wonder if they realized they just made like a trans that character is transgender functionally because like when like people like design a peacock related character, the peacock is the like going into detail here, but like the feathers and stuff they associate, that's like a secondary sex characteristic of like the masculine peafowl, but it's like associated with femininity by humans. And I think that was sort of interesting to me.
Mhm.
That like all across like popular culture, people are like unintentionally creating trans femme imagery. But or at least like showcasing that like gender is like not a concept recognized by other life forms. Um, so yeah, um, but like the design of the gods, to get back to what I was talking about, the design for the design for like what does a porpoise person look like? That seems like immeasurably fucked up in my head. Like a porpoise person or like a crab person and stuff like that.
Mhm.
And so
Yeah,
there's
it's
a lot of like strange character designs that like you have to sort of build in your head.
yeah, which is always fun. I think that like I really like books where that kind of happens. Like I have like this I read like, like I think that a lot of times Afrofuturism and like stuff like that, like I like this idea of like having all these creatures that you have to kind of like imagine like in like what's that word? Uh, the guy that's like really racist and like people always talk about his books, even though he's like super racist and Lovecraftian kind of way.
Oh yeah, Lovecraft. Yeah, that's interesting. This is going to be a tangent for the recording, but just like thinking about Lovecraft and his ability to write eldritch horror, I'm like, I think you'd almost like. I don't think anyone would understand eldritch horror more than a bigot. I think because like the experience, like the first person experience of being a bigot is like the ultimate in Eldritch is the like ultimate Eldritch horror experience because it's like Eldritch horror is about your worldview being truly and utterly wrong. That's the core of
Yeah,
Eldritch horror. And like Eldritch horror is like going, wait, there's an entire world of other people out there to which my worldview and lived experience there's an entire physical, real, actual, material world out there to which my lived experience is completely irrelevant and not and does not explain. And that's eldritch horror. So yeah, I don't know. I think it almost doesn't come as a surprise to me that Lovecraft is racist. It's like
right. And
bigotry.
also,
Yeah,
I think that Afrofuturism kind of takes that idea and kind
and
of
flips
flips
it
it
on
on
its
its
head.
head in a really interesting way.
Yeah,
And
it's sort of
so, like,
like the word I've sort of like come to understand it is it's like eldritch instead of eldritch horror, it's like eldritch bliss or something.
yeah,
Eldritch
something like that.
adventure. It's like
Yeah, well, like there's like this idea that there's like this existential world where like there's like this freedom from oppression and things like that. And
mm,
they usually kind of like bring oppression back into it in like an interesting way, but like that like it's not about race, or it's not about the specific type of bigotry that you face. It's about like a different like class or something, like something different, right? Or so I think that like in a sense you have uh like Octavia Butler, who like really sort of like pioneered this kind of idea, and then it's kind of like one of the the
oh,
mothers of this sort of um exist this sort of genre of literature. So to like see that there are, and as someone that has read a lot of Octavia Butler's work and really saddened by the fact that she can't contribute anymore, is it's heartening to like know that there are other authors who have like sort of picked up that mantle and sort of ran with it, so that we can still get those really important and um you know representational stories out there, like where we can see ourselves represented in these fantastical worlds.
yeah, I think yeah, because like that same experience of learning that your lived experience the same like sensation of learning that your lived experience is not an objective truth might actually be really like liberating and like it might be like a pleasant discovery for a lot of people. I think that your lived experience it's like it becomes very different if you're not in like a privileged identity. The knowledge that your lived experience is not an objective truth is actually a good thing in some situations. Like
Yeah, that's true.
especially if you like suffer from like anything, like if you're like discriminated against for like a mental health reason or like your like level of ability and stuff like that. I think, and yeah, I think that would be it's very different, and yeah, it's sort of present in this book. Like there's a lot of like strange things that happen like a lot of like learning that the universe is like maybe not so brilliant. Like it's sounding like a lot of the previous gods before Namvula were kind of shitheads to humanity. But I think yeah, and she like sort of learns that she's like, I want to be a benevolent god, and then like almost immediately after, all the humans like try and drag her up and down the street, and there's like this really horrific situation with her mum, and
Yeah,
like
and it's
she just sort
interesting
of
that like this takes place in a place like South Africa,
mm,
where it's you sort of can't get away from any conversation like that in a place like South Africa where
mm,
it's sort of like this very
the
visceral history of
the
um oppression and things like that.
what was it, the Mrs. Donovan, she was sort of like she was like an icon in like a shitty way. um, but she only had a few minutes of screen time, and she successfully used it to make us hate her. Um, but like when she like goes to stoke her and says, "Oh, you're our great white hope," I was like, that was a visceral experience for me, working with like a lot of like decrepit old people at this hospital. They'll be like
Oh wow.
There'll be like an old grandma, and like all of the nurses and stuff are from like East and Southeast Asia in this hospital. And this is just like, oh, it's nice to have you around. And I'm just like, cool. Now let's do what the nurse says. The nurse is the one with the medical degree. Um,
It's also like you
I,
have to remember that like,
I'm a
when
glorified
people like
grunt.
yes, they may be awful people, maybe, but like you have to
Yeah.
remember that, like maybe right before they got sick, they were like really good people. Cause like some you
Mm,
like deteriorate and that sort of like
yeah.
um regression of mental capability
Yeah. Lots of people with
happens.
like a lot of people with like degenerative like brain situations, especially in like the aged care ward and stuff like that. Anyway, I'm talking about my job. Um, but yeah, just like Mrs. Donovan, what a character.
Yeah,
How I
they become
remember.
Lovecraft in their old age.
Yeah, well, that's the thing. Like Lovecraft, the like Lovecraftian horror is like the experience of suffering from like of suffering from a condition that you are no longer able to look after yourself. Because we meander a lot in these Zoom calls. But yeah, I think
But usually I don't. It's not.
it's
The
not that.
the meandering is not always recorded. So, but
Yeah. Um. But yeah, I think it was
well,
like
I think that's a good place to end
yeah.
the
Yeah.
recording. So we'll go
Awesome.
ahead and say bye, and we
Bye. Thanks
welcome
for watching.
anyone to watch next time.
I hope we didn't frazzle your brain with our like winding diatribe. I'm gonna have to Google that to make sure I used it right. Anyway, you can enter the recording.